Internet's not working.
That's awesome.
So they're so excited.
All right, everybody, our mics are live. Okay, apologize for the delay. We are now back from an executive session where we received personnel action recommendations. We will have some actions to make in just a moment. But first, I just want to welcome everybody and call us officially to order in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E. The following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could ask you all please to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, come on.
And I do believe you've all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any changes, additions, corrections? All right, then that will stand with unanimous consent. So as I mentioned, we started at 5 with an executive session to receive personnel recommendations, and I believe we have a handful of actions that we need to take.
We do indeed. I'd like to make a motion that we re-employ for the 21-22 school year the administrative and district office professional staff whose names are on list A.
Second.
So that is a motion and a second to reemploy 107 district office personnel and staff for the 21-22 school year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, you guys are reemployed.
I'd like to make a motion that we re-employ for the 21-22 school year the certified teaching staff whose names appear on list B, 1,317 certified staff.
Second.
Motion and a second to reemploy 1,317 certified staff included on list B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties over here. I'd like to make a motion that we not re-employ for the 21-22 school year the teachers whose names are on list C, subject to any hearing rights they may have under state law. That would be teacher A and teacher B.
Second.
Motion and a second to not renew 2 individuals on list C, teacher A and teacher B, subject to all the legal provisions. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Oh, now, moving right along. Let's see here. I would like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the fulfillment of 28 new positions for the 21-22 school year.
Second.
Motion and a second for 28 new positions for next school year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for 43 replacement positions for the 21-22 school year.
Second.
Motion and a second for 43 replacement positions for next school year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries.
And I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to name James Ledford as the assistant principal at Catawba Ridge.
Second.
Motion and a second for James Ledford to be the new assistant principal at Catawba Ridge. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
And I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to name Elizabeth Hinman as the coordinator of specialized instruction, replacing Julie Warner.
Second.
Motion and a second for Ms. Henson to become the new specialized coordinator of, I don't have that,
Specialized instruction.
specialized instruction. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I think I'm done now.
All right, so for those following along, that was 71 positions that we have found new staff to fill. We're very excited about that. Still a few more to go, but I think that puts us in really great shape, so very excited, looking forward to next year. On our agenda, our next item is the approval of minutes from March 2nd and March 16th meetings.
Actions.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Never mind, you're right.
You've all received copies of those minutes from March 2nd and March 16th. Were there any adjustments or corrections?
No, ma'am.
All right, then those shall stand as published. Ms. Pettis, do we have any public participation tonight? No, ma'am, we don't. All right. Then we'll move right along and move into staff reports, and our first up is Ms. Leanne Lordo with some financial information.
Good evening. Lots of numbers to share with you this evening. And parts may overlap between the monthly financial information and discussion of the budget, but I'm going to try to start with just the monthly financial and impact fees first. In your packet, you have the monthly financials as of February 28th. We're 8 months into the fiscal year. Total revenues were $119,091,343. Total expenditures were $97,830,207. That is a positive cash flow as of that period of $21.2 million. For comparative purposes, same time last year, we were at $18.2 million. So I consider pretty much on target with the increase in our budget. As I shared with you last month, property tax collections were very positive, and somewhat a relief to see that they came in. We're on target for budget. We have now collected 95.7% of our property tax budget. We've collected $58.4 million of our $61 million budget. So that's extremely positive, I think, during what we had been hearing, the uncertainty because of the economic conditions related to COVID this year, to see that York County was still experiencing that level of property tax collections. I'm hearing the same thing from the other districts as well as the county level also. Just for a little bit of detail, February taxes for real property, as we would expect, dropped back down to about $539,000. Vehicles, $857,000. We're averaging anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million. I actually just saw the March reports this afternoon, and we collected $1 million in vehicle property taxes for March. And then we did not have any fee in lieu collections, which would have been delinquent in February. Any questions about monthly financials as far as February, as of February? Okay. Rolling into impact fees, we have now gone over $39 million as of the close of business yesterday. We've collected $39,245,401. We have collected on 1,572 single-family units and 885 multifamily for a total of 2,457 units. March and April to date, combined, we had 84 new homes and 27 apartments. So we're still continuing to see a steady growth in permits issued at the county level.
And that'll probably put us over the 40 mark.
I think we'll get to the 40 mark this month. Yes, because this was as of yesterday, close of business yesterday.
Wow.
We are still discussing, as I shared with you last month, we're still discussing the best plan for drawdown of those funds to provide the greatest benefit to our taxpayers over several years. So we're working on that diligently right now.
And that'll all be part of the normal budget process.
It will.
That, is it May meeting or is it June?
We will have the public hearing in May, and we will ask for board approval of the budget at your first business meeting in June.
And the
Yes.
impact fee strategy won't be revealed until after that.
I think by then we should have a pretty good proposal. We're giving this a lot of thought working with our bond financial advisor firm as well as legal counsel.
It's a
'Cause
mix
even though
together.
And
that's technically the operating budget, we like to look at millage
Correct.
collectively.
correct. Yes. A couple interesting things that I just wanted to share before we get into talking about the budget. Talking about our debt millage, today I actually had the bond ratings calls with Moody's Investors and Standard & Poor's out of New York for our upcoming bond sale, which will be April 27th. These are always very interesting discussions, and the general topics that they want updates on are our enrollment updates, our financial situation, the general economic update for this area, and then where are we with capital planning and what may be coming down the road. I can't tell you how positive they are about the district and about how we have continued to handle the growth as well as the impact of COVID on us this year, how we ended financially for June 30th, the preliminary work, what, potentially our budget could look like next year, opening these new schools, hiring new teachers. They're just extremely positive about the continued management and your decisions related to this district. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared that with you. Both groups on the phone today pretty much had the same comments back to us. And as I mentioned, the bond sale will be April 27th, and we'll share the results. That's going to be an $11.2 million sale. Okay. Also today, as we move into talking about the budget, the Senate Finance Committee met this afternoon, so I was actually listening to that prior to walking into this meeting. I didn't hear, it's a very tedious process they go through, and they were going through every proviso. So I didn't really get to hear a lot of what I was hoping to hear as far as what we may could expect, any changes to their plan versus what we know the House Ways and Means passed. But I am anticipating hearing more about that through the remainder of this week, because the plan is that they will pass their version of the budget this week. It will be printed next week, and then the Senate will take up the budget, the full Senate, the week of April 26th. So unfortunately, I really don't have any specific details to share about where I think Senate Finance may go. You may have seen, though, that the last week the South Carolina Board of Economic Advisors met. They have now amended or revised their revenue forecast and increased it significantly for not only the current year, but for next year as well. From what I understand, primarily due to sales tax projections. They had previously, if you remember going into this year with the pandemic, they had reduced the revenue estimate by $800 million. They've now restored $610 million of that. They've also now projected a surplus of $646 million. So there's going to be about $1.7 billion additional for them to consider allocation, how they're going to allocate that in next year's budget. A portion of that is recurring, and a large portion, $1.3 billion, is non-recurring. The speculation is that they may not make those decisions at the House and Senate level until later this summer or fall. I have seen some articles where some of our legislators said we're going to go back and reconsider this by June. So we will just have to continue to watch that and see how quickly, if the House Ways and Means goes back and amends their budget plan that quickly, or if they wait till it goes through the full process and then they reconvene this summer.
So for our meeting on May 22nd, I think we said it was, our budget hearing, we will base it on the best information that we have at that point in time.
Absolutely.
And then if something changes, we'll do an amendment later in the.
We
late
will.
summer, early
If
fall.
something significantly changes, we will do an amendment later. But at least we will have seen it go through Senate Finance and the full Senate and hopefully Conference Committee at the state level. The two pieces that we hope will happen, or at least one of the two, is for them to reconsider the teacher salary scale and make a cost of living adjustment for teachers on the teacher salary scale, and increase the amount, the base student cost per pupil. Because right now, in House Ways and Means, it has only increased by $11 per student. It's gone from the current amount of $2,489 to a flat $2,500. So we're hoping that they would do both of those two items, which would significantly help us, or at least one of those items, and fund it. So that's what we're watching very closely as far as the budget for next year. As far as our budget, we are still, once I received the House Ways and Means version, it was very, very close to what we had originally presented to you. The revenue, a slight difference in the revenue, but we also had a slight, once we finalized the position costs for next year based on current staff, we had a slight increase in that, so it almost offset each other. So we're still waiting on a couple, I think I shared with you a couple key pieces of revenue. I'm still waiting on what that state funding level is going to be for the teacher salary step, not only for this year to basically reimburse your commitment to our teachers, but also for next year. That's a large piece. We're also waiting on the local millage limitations based on county population by the Census Bureau. I reached out to Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office this week, and that won't be released until May the 4th. So we will not know what the potential tax millage limitations are until that time. And then the other piece that we're waiting on is the amount of federal ESSER III dollars that we're hearing could be 3 to 4 times the ESSER II dollars. I have seen a preliminary chart that has our district receiving about $5 million, but that is not a reliable source. So we've not officially received those allocations to date.
That would be compared to the 1.2 we received in ESSER 1?
The 2.2,
Okay, so you're
the
talking about
2.2.
more than a double if that's the.
Correct. So there's just a lot of pieces still unclear for us to really bring you any more priorities as far as budget. But hopefully, next meeting, we'll know a little more. We are still addressing what we think the priorities are as administration, specifically related to the virtual academy, now that we've closed registration, and related to special ed. So we're still having a lot of discussions about that. And as I mentioned to you, prioritizing what we're going to put in ESSER II funding as well as ESSER III funding once we know that final number.
Leanne, in addition
Sure.
to the dollars themselves, base student costs, teacher salary steps, et cetera, at one point we had talked about any allocation methodology changes, and I think we didn't expect anything material to be happening this year. Is that still?
At the state level, we do not expect any material changes in their methodology for this year. We should see some adjustments on our revenue for base student cost once the 135-day data is finalized statewide. Because of everyone's shift in calendars, the 135-day was later this year. So we have not seen that final allocation adjustment from the state yet. So I'm hoping we will see a little bit of an upswing for us based on our 135-day data. So just everything's shifted a little later this year because of that.
But you still feel comfortable with keeping our budget hearing on the 25th of May?
Yes, as of right now. I mean, I think we need to move forward with a budget, and as Dr. Epps mentioned, we will bring you an amendment if we think that's necessary later on.
Similar to that last year, we were coming up against the deadline and we approved something.
We did. When the state passed the continuing resolution, we asked you to go ahead and pass a budget.
And we didn't end up having to change it,
We didn't.
but we knew we might have to.
We knew we might if the state came back in September and passed a budget. Okay. Another interesting piece that was discussed that I wanted to share at Senate Finance this afternoon was a bill that it's called a manufacturing exemption exclusion. And from what I've been told, utility companies have been, I guess, trying to be reclassified as a manufacturer because that would provide a lower assessment percentage for them. But that bill clearly stated that a utility company is not classified under the manufacturing assessment. So that passed. We got word that passed out of Senate Finance 20-0 this afternoon. And so now it'll go to the full Senate. But the county's been watching that very closely. They had sent us projections, and it could impact us by $144,000. So hopefully that'll be clarified for good now. I know that appeal has been going on for a little while now with the county, but they have kept us informed. They've done a really good job of keeping us informed about what was going on with that. And then the last thing, any questions about the budget? I mean, we are working on it and trying to keep up with everything going on in Columbia. We just wish they would move a little faster. And the last thing I wanted to mention is we haven't really shared this, I don't think, in prior years, but at the state level, the State Department issues something called a subrecipient risk assessment, and it's primarily tied to receiving federal money. It's based on your overall financial and programmatic performance, and there's 10 categories that are evaluated. And just to give you an idea, a few of the categories that they rate us on are required reporting. It can be financial reporting. It can be program reporting. They also rate compliance, the program compliance. They rate frequency and need of technical assistance, which is an interesting one. But there's 10 different categories. The scores can range from 9 to 29. And it's based on that range, you're either considered low risk, medium risk, or a high risk school district. So 9 is the low risk, 29, you're a high risk school district. We received our letter April 1st, and we're happy to report we have a score of 9. So we received the lowest risk assessment. I think last year we were at a 10, which we didn't like that at all. But we did receive that, and so we are at a 9, which is the lowest you can get as far as risk assessment.
That's fantastic.
So I wanted to share that with you.
Fantastic.
That's a combination not only financially, but other departments, specifically curriculum and special ed, and working with all the federal funds. So,
Bravo.
yes.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah. Any other questions? And we'll continue to share information with you as we receive information.
And I know, Leanne, you're obviously talking about Senate and House provisos and things that are related to the budget. I've seen a bunch of other things about more curriculum, related.
Yes.
I assume at some point, once those are finalized, we'll get an update on what, if anything, that means in terms of any changes that we need to make. New curriculum, economics, there were some other things that I had seen that looked like they were considering anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
We get a lot of requests right now. They usually come to me first from the State Department where they have been asked to survey districts and get a fiscal impact of some of these bills. And so if I cannot or not, am not comfortable with what that means to us, I will shoot those out to various other staff members to help me answer. And so we try to respond to all of those surveys that we're receiving. And a lot of that is to determine, to help at the state level with House and Senate members if they want to keep pushing those bills forward. So, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next, we have an action item related to a whole bunch of policies that we did first reading last meeting. Liza, are you doing this, Ms. Garrity? All right. I don't remember how many it was, but it's a dozen or so.
Well, good evening. At last month's board meeting, as you recall, we presented some slight recommendations to 16 policies. We began the review of Section G personnel policies last school year, and then, had a little bit of a break in service with COVID, but we were happy to resume this year with our review. Marty McGinn, Michelle Branning, and myself met earlier this year and then presented the first reading at last month's meeting, as I indicated. But in the 16 policies that we discussed during first reading last month, there were just a couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention. I do believe in your packet on board docs, policy GCC, professional staff leaves and absences, as well as GDC for support staff leaves and absences. We actually caught an oversight that we missed in under organ donor leave on page 2 of each policy, where it had been left blank, but the recommendation is that any staff member seeking leave to be an organ donor must forward a written request, including appropriate documentation from a physician, within 30 days, preferable 30 days prior to needing to take the leave. And so that was a recommendation, again, to GCC and GDC.
And those changes, along with the majority of what's in here, are really adopting, I'll call them new policies, but new language from, at a state level, the recommendations, right? Including
Right, the model policies from the School Boards Association of South Carolina. Correct. The next item that I just wanted to provide the board with some feedback, I know also regarding policy GCC and GDC, one of the items that we discussed was about the potential transfer for out-of-state sick leave for employees coming into our district as new hires, and potentially any sick leave incentives for sick leave over 90 days for our employees. And so one of the things that I did to try to see what some other districts in our, South Carolina are currently doing in these areas, we have a personnel or HR directors group through SCASA. And so I reached out. We have kind of like a format that we share information. And I had about 10 other districts respond. And what was shared regarding the transfer of sick leave from out-of-state employees, all 10 districts that responded indicate that they do not accept out-of-state leave. And the primary reason for that, and I believe we touched on this a little bit as well, is that a lot of that has to do with PEBA, South Carolina Retirement Systems, and the guidelines and kind of the process for being able to apply a number of your days towards your retirement final distribution amount. So it is something that I think most districts do not consider for that main reason. The other piece was about any incentives for unused sick leave over 90 days is what most districts, of course, we allow the accrual for our employees for up to 120 sick leave days. But many other districts cap theirs at 90. And so the feedback that I received from, again, about 10 districts, 3 of the 10 said they offered an incentive for employees for any days over 90 at the end of the year. They indicated $60 for certified and $30 for support, which I don't know if that is, that figure relates to their sub rate or what have you, but it was just a standard rate. 3 of the 10 all responded they did offer the incentive, and the other 7 said they did not offer any incentives for leave over 90 days for sick time. So at this time,
And we're already at 120.
correct. Any questions about any of the 16 policies from last month's meeting or current information I've shared with you tonight?
Your recommendation remains the same then, according to what you presented last week on the out-of-state transfers.
Correct. I believe our recommendation would be that we, as current policy exists, we do not allow or accept the transfer of leave out of state leave. And we're also, regarding incentives over 120 days or 90 days, our recommendation would not really be at this time to offer any kind of nominal fee or standard fee for paying employees for sick leave. And the reason for that, we also had some discussions last year, I think, with the board. I don't know if some of you may recall, especially in light of COVID, that there were concerns that some employees may, not all, but some may come to school wanting desperately, to meet that requirement, to be able to get that little bonus or incentive. And certainly, we want to ensure that we do everything we can to encourage employees to not come to work if they are sick or even suspect that they may be ill. So I think that was one of the main reasons we just felt at this time, not that we may not reevaluate that in the future.
Thanks for looking into both of those items. I think, anytime that we can add something in board policy that allows retention or recruitment, it enhances those aspects of our district. Not that it's not an amazing district to work for in the first place, but that allows, especially HR, to go out and get the folks that we need. Then I'd like to hear about it. I'm sure other board members would as well.
And to confirm that we are in fact following best practices, right?
Even better, right? We're most people are at 90. We're at 120. That's a huge deal, right? So thank you.
All right, thank you. So again, yes, the administration would recommend, as presented, the updates to the 16 policies listed overhead for immediate update to our online board policies.
For purposes of a motion, I would like to point out that I'm only counted 15 attachments, but I do think I count 16 in the list over to the side, so
Okay.
as far as catching that,
Okay.
quantifying that.
So, for the purposes of a motion, can we do a blanket motion for all 16 of the policies? If
think we
just
have to
name them
name them.
individually?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably go through the list on the left. not-
Yeah, trying to compare.
Not the attachments, just find those.
All right. Would anyone
Which
like
is a
to
little
make
more
a motion?
difficult.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to update policies GCC, Administrative Rule GCCR, GCCE, GCQE, Administrative Rule GCQFR, GDA, GDB, GDBC, Administrative Rule GDBCR, GDC, let's see, Administrative Rule GDCR, GDF, GDJ, Administrative Rule GDJR, GDKA, GDQC.
Second.
Good job.
Motion and a second to accept the 16 policy changes as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, all 16 are approved.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item number 9, which is the superintendent's report.
Okay, let's start out with the calendar of events, and as always, after I run through what I have, y'all have other dates to mention, please do so. Just completed spring break, of course, the meeting tonight, another meeting in 2 weeks here, another board meeting where we'll hope to have a little more about the revenue side, right, Leanne? Then you go into the May 25th, I think's the big date there that we've already mentioned a couple of times, the board meeting / public hearing for the budget for 21-22. That meeting is required by law, or that hearing is required by law. Then Memorial Day, we'll have off the 31st, getting on into June. On to graduation on Wednesday, June 9 at 9 a.m. at all 3 high school stadiums. And I think we talked about splitting the board up and spreading us out to all 3 events. Then you've got the rain dates there, and they roll all the way through, I think, Friday or so. Then the last day, the 9th week from now, the end of the 9th week from now for high school is the 11th. Then the last day for elementary and middle, the 18th. And then, of course, that's I think it's a 6 weeks turnaround, 6 weeks turnaround before we crank back up. So the summer ended up being probably, with us delaying the start, maybe 2 weeks shorter. Does that sound right? Or maybe 3, 2? It wasn't as bad as we anticipated or thought, you know. That's bad enough. I mean, for people that like to, that means we've got to do a lot of vacating there in a shorter period of time. But so we'll get back in gear. Right now, I know there are a lot of questions about next year. Right now, today, what's the day? April the 13th. We plan on being normal when we begin. But we'll have to go through the summer and see how things are, and that's a lot of time. You know, a lot can happen. But our intention is to start on that day in August, the 3rd Monday, and be as normal as the laws and the recommendations will allow us to be. That's our intention. The other dates that I may have failed to mention of note.
I have a couple. So you didn't mention, but on Thursday of this week, we've got our Teacher of the Year and Sports Staff of the Year recognition.
We do, and it's not a public.
It's not a public event, but.
We were gonna,
We actually started promoting that today. We're gonna be live streaming that event.
Sweet,
okay.
perfect.
Good.
Oh, not
Just the
support
Teacher
staff,
of the
just
Year,
teacher,
right.
okay. On May the 6th, I'm sure it is not a secret, but that's when all the road work will begin on I-77. Now granted, we don't have to go south, across the bridge for any of our students to go to school. However, I can only anticipate that it's going to cause some challenges just getting around town because of the people who are redirecting. I know that you guys have already been talking and working out what it means for bus routes, and we're just gonna have to kind of
Deal.
see what happens, but that's gonna be a tough 3 weeks.
And I think for our families that are crossing Sutton to go to Banks Trail or Riverview or whatever, you know,
And even the
Just
kids
to
going to Fort Mill
prepare.
High School with all the
Right.
traffic that's gonna be going on 21, I mean, all over the place, it's gonna be an adjustment for a few weeks.
Well, and just trying to get across, no matter where it is, you know. You could look at Springfield Middle School kids, Springfield Elementary School kids, Nation Ford High School kids. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's gonna have an impact across
Yep.
the board.
I also believe that since we met last, the high schools have confirmed that they're having some form of senior celebrations, not to be confused with the prom, but kind of
Yeah.
like a prom.
Friday night, June the 4th. Yeah, there's gonna be a prom slash senior celebration slash event slash question mark at all three schools. They're still working on the specifics, I believe, but it's a 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I believe is the time frame, right? And each school will share with their seniors the final plan.
But I'm just so excited that they're getting to have something, so. Likewise, on the 5th of June, for those of you who remember last year, TDK did a senior parade for any school, and it didn't even have to just be high school. It could be the private schools, it could be the colleges, but, you know, so there is a TDK parade. I'm trying to remember, it started, where did it start? It started at Gold Hill, maybe, last year?
I think
It started in the Gold Hill
Went
parking
through
lot and went
Walmart.
all the way through Lake Ridge and TDK, so I saw some traffic about that happening again this year, with it. I thought it was exciting. And then I was just looking at the calendar to make sure I have this right. There's 2 half-days at the end of each of the grade levels, right? There's the 10th and the 11th at the high school level, and the 17th and the 18th for the elementary and middle, right?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure I have. And the 9th being a virtual day for high school.
Only.
For only high school for the purposes of accommodating graduation. Okay. Okay. What else you got?
Any other dates?
Right,
I
any-
can't tell you the dates because I can't recall off the top of my head right now, but in June, NSBA will be hosting their virtual advocacy conference. I did SCSBA's virtual advocacy conference this year, and it was surprisingly better than I thought it was going to be for what we do from an advocating standpoint. I had good results anyway, but then we all would expect that, so, just saying. And I feel like I had something else, but that's the only one I can think of right now. August is a ways away, but August, the law conference for SCSBA has changed its look. They will still be restricting attendees, but they have figured out that we need to guarantee each district that we serve a specific number of seats. So they're
Yay.
changing that structure.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think we'll receive 3, and mine does not count in that 3.
Okay.
So,
All right. Anything else for the calendar?
Yeah, as far as, and this may be a little out of place, but fundraising events with the foundation, and so you could say, I know there's something tomorrow, a skeet shoot.
Tomorrow's at Rocky Creek Sporting Clays, and then June 24th will be the Tech Dowling Golf tournament that they do every year, and they've determined to do that in Lake Wiley at the Palisades.
oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
So those two are opportunities for the public to participate with the foundation.
Absolutely. So June 24th, which is also Tech's birthday.
And I'm guessing at some point soon that will start being promoted for
I
teams.
think
and
they're
all
going
that
to
kind
do
of stuff,
like Rocky
HR.
Clays right now, and then shortly in the next day or two.
Good.
Okay. All right, attendance update. We gained, like our slow trickle typical this time of year, I think we went up by 12 total students. We're up to 16,923. Of course, that does not include the ones that graduated at mid-year. And the monthly attendance winners, Fort Mill High School for, let's see, for February, is that right, Pat?
Yep.
For February, okay. Fort Mill High School at 96.8, Pleasant Knoll Middle, 96.6, and Gold Hill Elementary led the way with 97.69. So there you go. Still continue to be high numbers during the pandemic. Questions? Questions for me?
Everybody's back from spring
Yeah,
break? We're in the home stretch?
In that regard, we sort of like when we came back from Christmas, the number of positives are real low. Quarantines about where they were. I think Katie's in there. We would, if the same thing happened at Christmas that happens next week, the end of this week, we may see an increase in positives due to the travel or the quarantines, but remains to be seen. It's looking good, though. York County, last week was back in the moderate level. So I hadn't checked today, but I believe, anyway, so it looks good across the board there. Things are going about like we projected as far as the trends. So it's looking good right now as far as one step in front of the other each day.
And timing-wise, we're at the point where it's been a full 2 weeks plus since our teachers had the most recent opportunity. I know several took advantage of other opportunities even earlier, but, so those who took advantage of that are now, by definition, fully vaccinated, so that's exciting. Having been at the clinic a lot, we've had a lot of our high school students start to come through now that 16 and above are eligible. I've seen quite a number of high school students coming through and, continuing to promote that throughout the community to increase the numbers overall.
Dr. Epps, I just want to take a minute, having personally experienced the quarantine procedures most recently, and just thank you, right? Thank the district leadership. Thanks everyone who's contact tracing. Thank you for the teachers who just kind of turn on a dime and go into remote instruction and make sure that students aren't being left out. They're not falling through the cracks. It is completely disruptive, right, to life in general, to our students' lives, to our parents' lives, and to our teachers' lives. But just the way that it's been handled, the way that it's been communicated, was very good. Wish we hadn't had it, but the district, I think, makes it a lot easier to go through in how it's handling. So thank you very much.
Well, I just turn it right around and thank the people who did the work for certain. When you look at the whole year, from starting out to where we weren't sure we were going to make it 2 weeks to where we kept pushing and grinding is the word I've liked to use. It has not been all hunky-dory, but I think we're gonna at the end of the year, I think we're gonna feel like we've accomplished a good bit. A lot of days of total instruction for our kids, I believe, compared to a lot of places. Certainly not completely ideal, but particularly at the elementary level, kind of since September 28th, I believe was the day we've been back in the family model. I think that accomplishment alone right there, I think helped save or helped that whole elementary age child not lose as much ground as they could have, and which we all agree is critical. I'm certainly not saying the middle and high school is any less important in regards to time of instruction, but just if we can look back, I think that would be the success moment of the year, I believe, in my opinion.
Well, I think especially when you made the call, especially going back 5 days at the middle and high school, I really do think there were a number of students, especially at that middle school level, that were just hanging on by a thread. And that by getting them back, especially when we did, that it's allowing them to get back in the process, get back in the swing of things, and be successful as they can as a student. So I appreciate all the work that everybody's done in making that happen.
And that's why these last 9 weeks, 10 weeks are so important. A lot can be done in 9 to 10 weeks. So I'm excited about the closeout of the school year.
Well, the teachers, I know there's a lot of angst, but they're so excited to have the kids back. It's just that's been and I knew that would be the case once we got there. Still, we need to practice our cautions, but I've seen in their faces just that little bit of normalcy back in their lives, which, like you say, excites everybody.
And the weather's better, and so I'm seeing more outdoor activities, and all that is very beneficial.
It never was about teachers not wanting to be with their kids, and that was proven. That's been proven.
What else you got? Anything?
Let's see, something else fun I can talk about. No, I don't. We won the impact fees lawsuit. The budget is good news on the Board of Economic Advisors projections. That's could have been bad news, and that was good. So it looks like we'll have some. We're not going backwards, at least. We're still trying to work through our final budget, though. That's, with growth like it is, I think people, and I guess the big surprise to me, just sitting back, armchair quarterback, is the housing market has continued to just explode, not just in the Fort Mill, but in the Southeast in general during this pandemic. And that has really exacerbated our problem as far as meeting the needs of the number of students we have coming in. I'm of the opinion that they're all going to come back, or at least a large number, percentage-wise, will return next year, if not during next year, assuming everything continues on a positive trend line with the pandemic. I don't think people really, and the job the board does, the administration does in planning for this growth is one issue, but planning in light of the uncertainty we've been faced with, and maybe there's been some luck involved. I don't know, but we've been able to come out on this side of it in better shape than maybe many thought we would.
Better knock on some wood.
That's right, seriously.
Well, I was trying to talk about some positive things.
I know. I just want to make sure that all holds true.
I do too. I just want college football back.
All right. Unless there's anything that I have forgotten, we are not in need of an additional executive session. So and we won't have any actions because we won't be going into executive session. So that brings us to a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.